So this video is from 4 years ago, the early days of Shawn Ryan. He sits down to debate a liberal on policing in the United States.
You're trying to make a logical decision while bullets are flying past your head.
Because at that time, this wasn't a common occurrence, especially in Shawn Ryan's position with his training experience, talking about these things in this manner.
The police think they're at war. A lot of training I see kind of pushes that narrative. But based on the data, it looks like police are actually rather safe in their line of work, and that their civilians are not.
He thinks that civilians are less safe than police officers.
In 2019, 89 law enforcement officers were killed in the line of duty. However, they killed 1,348 people in the U.S. alone.
But what are the circumstances surrounding those deaths? What was the person doing? Were they armed? Were they not armed?
But I wonder how many police calls there were, how many times they responded to something, and what the percentage of that wound up, being bad.
That is the question. What is the percentage of police encounters that actually go bad, result in a shooting, a discharge of a weapon even, if we can consolidate this data down.
And, as far as like the fatalities that they're responding to, what are they responding to?
Exactly. That's the question to ask. What were the circumstances? What's the context?
I don't believe they think they're at war. But with that being said, police don't get called to respond just to bullshit.
Police do interact with people a lot. It probably seems to be that the overall majority of police interactions with civilians are non-fatal.
I think that would be safe to say the vast majority of police encounters are not fatal. Most officers, I think it would be safe to say, have never discharged their weapon.
There are instructors that go around, I'm sure you know some of them, that teach police training, and a lot of that narrative is pushed that they have a very dangerous job, they're at war, and I think that's the wrong way to go about it. I don't think that's the type of precedent you want to set for the police. You don't want to put them in that mindset.
It's not a narrative that policing is dangerous. They are going to where the danger is. It would be irresponsible not to train the police to understand the inherent risk of what they're doing, and that they need to be aware because they are voluntarily entering danger.
If you go in there thinking everything's just going to be just fine, like with Chicago, for example, certain neighborhoods of Chicago, violence there is through the roof. You can't even own a gun there.
Yet that's one of the areas where the death rate of handgun violence is at all-time highs.
I want to ask you a question. Do you think it would be foolish to go into a neighborhood with a very high homicide rate, thinking everything's okay?
No, I think there can be a middle ground. I don't think police should look at civilians that they are meant to protect as enemies, all of them. And they shouldn't assume that every situation they're rolling up on, you take Tamir Rice and Rayshard Brooks, these were kids. Tamir Rice was 12, I believe, and was on a playground with a toy gun, and he was shot by police. That's absurd to me.
Yeah.
And yes, that's an example of incompetence, but it sounds like he's trying to make the argument that police should not approach every situation with recognition of that it could potentially go bad at any moment, which it can. That's just reality. Let's look at the other side of the coin and go to Sam Richards. He asks his students the following question.
Law enforcement officers, do you think in the United States, how many law enforcement officers were killed in the line of duty?
They throw out their number.
500?
500?
Then he shows the actual statistic.
144.
Then he breaks down how they actually died.
What do you think are the causes of their deaths? 89 intentional deaths in 2016. 9.9 out of 100,000 people.
Although it would be safe to say that policing is not the number one most dangerous profession in the world, we can't negate the fact that the potential for violence is always lingering just beneath the surface of every encounter.
The left wing does it, the right wing does it, is we're all using language and ways of talking about things that polarize the debates and polarize the issues. So on a website like this, that in no way, shape, or form should be saying killed, they should be saying died and or killed. See, you see it polarizes. This happens to be the police, but the other side, as we're going to see shortly, other people do it as well.
I think it's foolish for this guy to try and make the argument that civilians are more at risk of the police than police are. You can't even begin to think about it in that way. Compare the total number of officers who were killed by a suspect. Compare that number to the total number of suspects that were wrongly killed. That fits into the sponsor of today's video, Ground News. Ground News is an app and website that lets you compare perspectives on any topic with full transparency on the political bias, financial incentives, and credibility behind the headlines. Whatever the debate shaping our lives is, the narratives we hear can shape what we think before we've even had a chance to question it. Critical thinking is all about thinking for oneself to navigate the stories and the patterns that make up the world. We see the differences in these stories through the lens of the media. Follow your favorite topics or simply paste any article link in their search bar to find the full coverage on heated issues and swipe between perspectives to form your own opinion based on all the facts. Ground News was designed to give you back control over your thoughts. That's why they created their blind spot feed, one of the most important things to check before trying to have constructive dialogue with people who think differently than you. Go to ground.news/Smith or scan the QR code on the screen. Viewers get the top tier Vantage plan for just $5 a month. So it's a handy tool. How best to navigate those stories, that's where Ground News comes in.
The police are briefed to protect and serve their communities that they live in.
Yeah, what does it mean to protect? What are you protecting against? A threat. How do you protect against a threat? With force. The capacity to be dangerous.
Protect and serve.
It's not like a dangerous precedent to set to have that mindset. No, that's necessary. That's training. It would be negligent to not articulate to them the reality of what they're doing.
I can't personally reconcile that 89 law enforcement officers were killed in the line of duty, half of those being accidents not related to crime. But over 1,300 civilians were killed by police.
Yeah.
That's pretty staggering to me.
Okay, but how many of those civilians, how many were armed? How many had a knife? There's going to be negligence within there. But to present data the way that this guy's doing, how could you deduce anything from that?
It is staggering. I would like to know the statistics of, if we're going to talk about percentages, what is the actual percentage of police responses that have gone bad?
How many people were killed by the police in 2016? All right, here we go. 2016, 963. Okay? So how many of the 963 people were unarmed? This is what we're talking about here, right? So here are the numbers. This was the most comprehensive analysis of the data.
There are going to be mistakes. There is police incompetence. We saw the notorious clip of an acorn falls on the hood of a car. The guy panics, calls shots fired.
Shots fired! Shots fired! Shots fired!
His partner runs up, says, "Where?" and just starts blasting.
I'm hit!
It's a shocking clip there's no excuse for it. That is incompetence. I think this also is a very good common sense argument around training. Shawn makes a good point about police need to spend more on training.
As it comes down to fucking training, which nobody seems to want to pay for.
He's witnessing firsthand. As someone at the time, he was in that field.
I found that out when I had a law enforcement agency ask me to conduct training for them. They had just gotten night vision, dual tube night vision, PBS 15s, which are about $10,000 a pop. And they did not want to pay me to teach these officers how to utilize night vision.
This idea that police are hunting people down and killing people in mass numbers who are unarmed is not accurate either.
I don't think that demonizing police is the right thing to do. That's why I want to know this percentage. If the percentage is 0.5%, which is probably even less than that, I'm really willing to bet it's less than that. You cannot demonize an entire fucking police force for 0.5%. You just can't do it, you know? And because you just chop the legs off of every other fucking cop out there who's trying to do good. And a lot of them are doing good.